You've no doubt heard it said that hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. Well, we are in hard times again, and that's why we need to raise strong men. Today marks the start of a brand new mini-series on the vital subject of raising strong men. We're going to be talking about raising strong sons, raising strong fathers, raising role models who are strong men, raising dead men and restoring their hope, and finally, raising resilient men who are built for adventure. You want to hang around and see all of these episodes. I'd really love you to make the commitment to watch this whole mini-series. As I already said, we're going to be talking about how we raise sons to be strong men and fathers and role models. I really can't wait to get into the subject of raising dead men and restoring their hope, and I'll break that down a whole lot more for you. And then, of course, the ultimate mission and purpose for men is that they become resilient and live a life of adventure. But let's touch each of these subjects for a few moments while we can today. Let's talk about raising sons to become strong men. We are seeing an epidemic in our society of young men who essentially are rudderless. They don't have strong voices in their life. They don't have a father figure. Even if their biological father is out of the picture, we still should be seeing some voices who can speak to our young men about character, things like hard work, resilience, the way they treat others, having dreams for their future, but we are lacking this so badly. And so I'm passionate about us championing this idea that we've got to raise sons, not just in our own households and our own families, but in our communities, in our sporting clubs, in our places of work, in our schools and universities. We've got to have a heart that is desperate to see our young men, our sons, because collectively they are our sons. I know from time to time we can move around our communities and we can get so fragmented that we only think about our own family tree. But maybe it's time for us to lift our eyes a little and get back to this idea that we belong to communities. You heard the saying before that it takes a village to raise a child. Well, maybe we need to resuscitate that a little, that we get engaged in village life again. And we take an interest in the fact that there is struggle and there is pain and there is lack of leadership and lack of direction going on for our young men, our sons. Not just our own sons, but collectively our sons. You see, they need to hear the right voices, because in the absence of the right voice, their identity is shaky, and they're going here, there, and everywhere listening to what I would call pseudo-gurus, people who are trying to be voices for our young men. But the way that you can measure that these voices are not helpful is watch the fruit that shows up in the lives of the listeners. If the fruit is bad, it's because the root is bad. Good trees don't produce bad fruit. Good trees produce good fruit. And if we're looking at our sons and we're concerned, and we should be concerned, about their lack of direction, their struggles with identity, their lack of character, the resilience that isn't there, we've got to take a look at the tree and the roots and get honest about the fact that something is not working. And we need to make a change. And we're going to do that in this mini-series. We're going to talk about the solutions. We're going to talk in detail, how do we raise our sons to be strong young men that become strong middle-aged men, strong older men, which brings me to the second point that we're going to touch in this series. How do we raise strong fathers? We've talked at length on this channel, as have many other people, about the absence, the void of fathers that we have in our society. Now, I don't really care overly if there are people out there who disagree with me on this point, which is to say, people have the right and the prerogative to disagree. But again, let's measure the evidence of our processes. And when something's broken, you don't just keep propagating a broken system. You have enough courage to stop get honest and say something's not working, we need to change something. And the fact of the matter is that evidence is all around us in our society. A life and an era of human history where we have attacked masculinity, we have tried to delete the importance of the father role. We are now seeing the fruit of those decisions, and it's not working. It's badly broken. You see, I've said this before. The answer to bad fathering is not deleting all fathering. The answer to bad fathering is good fathering. And we've got to get smarter. We've got to get more strategic. We've got to access the voices and the people who've got the runs on the board. They've got the proof in their history that they actually know how to produce good results. And if we don't get busy on this subject of raising strong men as strong fathers, we're going to continue to see this slide in our communities of children, women, families, everybody suffering as a result. Nobody wins because of the void of good fathering in society. So we want to train and raise men to understand that becoming a great father is a lifelong, worthwhile goal. That we give it our best, that we push through hardship, that we stay in the game even when we feel like tapping out, because what matters on the other end of our actions is those children and those young men and women that I just spoke about who desperately need us to get through our trial. And so we're going to break down exactly how do you do that? How do you turn this around? How do you turn the tide on a generation of fatherlessness so that we move into a new generation of good fathering where everybody benefits from when men become strong men? We're going to talk about the importance of role models. We see bad role models, bad actors, and I don't just mean the ones in the movies, I'm talking about every stage of life. Bad actors that are trying to occupy the role of role models or who are accidentally occupying the role of role models, and they're not helping. Their character can't sustain it. Their motives and their pursuits are not worthy of copying, and yet we're seeing generations of our young people follow in the footsteps of these pseudo role models that are not taking our young people to good places where they're living healthy, happy, enjoyable, purpose-filled lives. But rather we're seeing an increase of destruction. We're seeing an increase of detachment. We're seeing an increase of people who are asking themselves, what's the point? Why bother? Why get involved? Why be a part of community? These are not good outcomes. So if you're coming at this with any sense of logic, you have to realize that the evidence is mounting up, that the system is broken, and we need to change things from the bottom up. We've got to get back to grassroots about what works and what doesn't work. And for those of you out there watching and listening, if you agree with what I'm saying, it's time for you to stop leaning on just voices like mine and hiding in the shadows, especially if you're a man. I really want you to be challenged because of the care I have for you, that you need to access your voice again as well. You need to find that strength of muscle in your soul to say, enough is enough. I'm tired of being preached at by people who've got broken results here, there, and everywhere. We need to get back to values that work, and it's important that you play your part. You don't have to be famous. You don't have to be known on a screen. You don't need to have copious amounts of followers on your social media to make a difference. You start with one. You make up your mind that you're going to be a role model worth following for one person in your household, one person in your workplace, one person at the sports club where you volunteer. Get involved, stop hiding in the shadows, and make up your mind that you will be a role model worth following as well. I know that you can do it. This brings me to my fourth point, which will be our fourth thing that we cover in this series. Men were made for becoming role models. We were made for carrying a load. We were made for becoming courageous, being resilient, fighting worthwhile battles for the benefit of others. This is why we were put on the planet. But one of the most scary things that we see as we look across society is not just hundreds or thousands, but millions of men who have lost their heading and have charted a different course away from these valuable traits that in a generation not so long ago used to be so highly prized. And we've got to get back to it. You see, here's my observation. Right across our communities, we see in the millions dead men walking. Men who are particularly middle-aged, who hate their job, hate most of their life, battling mental health challenges, suffering with depression and anxiety, maybe being held in the handcuffs of addictive behaviours with gambling or pornography or alcohol abuse or overeating, whatever it is, using these coping mechanisms to deal with the pain that is tormenting them on the inside. And so this is why I use the phrase dead men walking. Sure, they're physically alive, their mortality is still intact, even if only by a thread, but on the inside, in their soul, in their emotions, in their thoughts, in the things that they're saying to themselves about themselves in their self-talk, it can be a dark, dark place. And so we see dead men walking, and we need to have the right voices, the right people, the right role models, the right strategy to get a hold of those men before they go off the edge of the cliff, either figuratively or literally, because they are in their droves. Men are tapping out, men are going back into their emotional caves, men are detaching and unplugging from the very thing that they were created for. And so a part of the mission, if you like, of this channel, this episode, this series, My Voice, I want to be someone that helps the process of restoring hope. When a person, especially a middle-aged man, reaches a point where he concludes that everything is hopeless, that tomorrow probably won't be better than today, that there aren't enough good reasons to get out of bed and battle on the next month, the next year. When a man gets to that place, we are all on the verge of great pain, great grief, great suffering, because when men tap out figuratively, metaphorically, emotionally, mentally, or in finality, and they take their life. When men tap out in this way, everybody experiences compound suffering. We need to reach these dead men walking. We need to help them realize that even though your job might not make you come alive, there are other missions in your life, that you can live a life on purpose with intent and make a difference in this world. If we don't restore hope in our dead men walking, we are going to see an entire generation of men who just disappear off into the shadows, and none of us on the planet can afford for this to happen. And so we want to take those men who seem feeble, who seem broken, who seem like they are past their prime and past their best. I've got a word for those men. You're not done yet. It's not over yet. You've still got time, and we need you. What you do matters. Your family needs you. Your workplace, your colleagues, your friends, your brothers need you. Don't give up. There is hope. Our last topic that we're going to cover in this mini-series that we're dealing with on raising strong men, we're going to talk about raising resilient men. Now, this comes to all generations and all ages. Right now, we're seeing a huge void of resilience in our young men. They have been trained and taught that the best road is the shortcut. Well, those of us who've been around for a while know that there's not many worthwhile prizes at the end of the shortcut road. But the greatest things in life come on the hard road, the high road, the things you've got to wait for, the things you've got to fight for. And yet we see this absence of resilience. It's just not there in middle-aged men and even in some older men. And so we want to talk about strategy and detail and actual practicals of how we're going to increase the watermark of resilience so that we get men back to living the life of adventure that they were built for. Climbing and conquering and exploring and coming over the top of their challenges and breaking through on behalf of others and bringing everybody with them into wider and wider spaces. This is what men were actually built for, and we got to do something with our voice, with our example, and with the resources at our disposal to lift men back into a place where their resilience muscle starts to flex and strengthen, and their life becomes once again about mission and adventure. That's all we've got time for in this episode today, but please make sure you tune in for the next episode coming up, where we're going to talk in specific detail about how we raise our sons to be strong men. You don't want to miss out on that. I've got practical strategy to share with you about things that actually work to produce that result. And then finally, let me say this, if you're not subscribed yet, please subscribe, not just for the sake of it. I really would love to know that you're there with me, that we're in this together. I don't want to just talk to a camera and go away happy that I've said my piece. I want to hear from you. I want to hear about your struggle. I want to know what your questions are. I want to know in what way you're challenged as a man in this stage of your life. So drop me a comment. Let me know something about that. If that's not private enough, find another way to contact with the email that's there. Send a direct message. Follow me on Instagram. All the links are in the show notes below for how you can get in contact. And please, whatever you do, reach out. Get involved, because together we can build something powerful here that makes a difference. Until next time, bye for now.